The little mouse was left alone after the unforeseen disappearance of his parents. Mourning his loss, as the flashbacks played in his mind. The family lived in a tiny corner, in the crevices of the walls, and was born and raised within these confines. He had never known the life outside these bounds and was heavily reliant on his parents to keep him fed. The pup's parents would go on hunts around the house for food, and since it had a lot of people, they needed to be sneaky, so they were kept unseen. The pup was taught by his parents to never make a sound, while the parents learned how to hide and stay out of sight. His parents would only go on hunts at night when the humans were asleep, and they would avoid rooms with humans in them to avoid being spotted. For a bit over a month, the pup's parents would go on these hunts and bring back enough food to feed him for the day. They made sure to keep him incognito at all times and taught him everything they knew about survival. Though the pup was taught proficiently, he never had the chance to take it into practice. The parents were confident that the kid learned well, however too protective to have him show it in action.
On one tragic, unexpected day, the pup's parents never returned through the scabbard in the wall. At first, the pup waited desperately for them to return, but as time went by, he realized that they weren't coming back. The days weren't getting easier, and neither was his food situation. Thankfully, his parents always kept an emergency stash of leftover food that they didn't eat. The pup hastily ate from the stash, without the thought of rationing the food. As he wept in the corner of his side of the wall, his stomach growled. He was feeling weak, nauseous, and felt the drop in energy. He desperately needed food. The pup realized that he wasn't going to survive very long like this, so he decided to defy what he learned and take the risk. He knew that he had to venture out of his home and find food for himself.
He cautiously peeked outside of the gaps in the wall, looking for any signs of danger. He waited until he saw that the humans were all asleep before he scurried out. Thanks to the training of his parents, he knew that the kitchen was the best place to look for food, so he started making his way towards it. As he took more steps, he was amazed by the outside world. He had never seen it before, and the large space made him feel lost. He looked back at the scabbard under the sofas, just to make sure it was still there. One thing he noticed, though it was nighttime, the outside world wasn't as dark as his home. The further he goes away from the house, the more anxious he gets. He has no idea what to expect of the world outside. He wants to go back, but he knows he has no other choice. The pup knows that he has to be very careful to stay hidden, but he was also very hungry and needed to get something in his stomach fast. As he searched for food, he saw big chunks of breadcrumbs on the far corner of the wall. Jackpot, he thinks. Without much more thought, he sprints excitedly. He rushed to start gnawing at the bread. It was stale and had a bad taste, but it was better than nothing. He expected it would taste like the ones his parents brought.
As he nibbles on it, he heard footsteps approaching. He knew that he had to hide, so he scurried to the door. He watched as a human walked into the kitchen, but thankfully, the human didn't notice him. Sweat trickling down his face, his eyes were filled with wonder. He found it fascinating, scary, but most importantly he felt small. This was the first time the pup saw anything bigger than his parents. As the human walked to the sink, he rotates something and water comes trickling out. Just like the water dripping in his house. Except the water he drinks falls of the roof and not a pipe like the humans, he realized that this place is not as different as he thought, just bigger, a lot bigger and fancier. The human drinks the water, a lot of it, and walks slowly back to bed in a grumpy face. The pup continued to search for food in the kitchen and around the house, eating as much as he can fit in his stomach. He found some bits of cheese, crumbs of crackers, and a few other random odd scraps on the floor. He went into tiny space, gaps and crevices between the fridge and the walls, that his parents could never fit into. As he was thinking of heading home, he hears a noise, a creak of a metal bed. He assumes it was a human, so he dashes under a small stool. Once he feels safe, he looks around to check where the sound is coming from. Within the blink of an eye, he sees a huge door open up, and out comes a human. The pup was terrified as the stool was right in front of the door. Thankfully the stool was close to the ground and not that high. He slowly backs up deeper into the stool. Meanwhile, the sleepy human didn't even notice him. The pup realized that this was the same human he saw earlier. The human walks to another door and slowly opens it. The sound coming from the inside of the room, the pup hears loud splashes of water and then a really loud flushing sound. Humans use up so much water, the pup thought to himself. Before the human opens the door, the pup darts back under the sofas in the living room. Finally, entering safely back into his house, after that tiring and stressful foraging session, the mouse was exhausted. He ate like a king, filled his stomach up and brought some extra food for the day. The pup realizes that he made a bunch of mistakes and things he could have done better. He reflects from the day and improves his survival tactics for tomorrow.
As the days went by, the mouse becomes more confident in his ability to survive on his own and is super grateful for his parents' teachings. The tips and tricks he learned was crucial in his survival earlier on, and it's what kept him alive. He learned a few things on his own and even modified some of his past skills with his current ones. He knew that he could never forget his parents, but he also knew that he had to be strong and fend for himself. He continued to venture out of his home in search of food at a suitable time each night and became a skilled scavenger. Throughout the years, the mystery of his parents' disappearance was always in his mind and his curiosity only grew over time. The mouse had learned the importance of survival, and he knew that he had to be careful and stay hidden to avoid being caught by humans or other predators. He missed his parents deeply, but he knew that they would be proud of him for keeping strong and resourceful.